Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today from wherever you are. Today, we will be running another installment in our product management leadership webinar series, and we'll be talking and sharing 5 tricks to get stakeholders on board with product. My name is Rina Alexin, and I'm the CEO of 280 Group. Over the past 4 years since I've joined the company, we've really positioned ourselves as a leader in providing product team transformation services. And Jake, I hope you'll agree with me here that stakeholder management is basically top of the list of helping product management teams become highly effective and highly empowered. And I'd like to introduce our main speaker for today, Jake Yangling. Jake is our Director of Client Services. He has the amazing job of leading our client services team, which is made up of our stellar trainers and consultants. Jake comes to 280 Group just over a year ago. Can't believe it's not been 2 years yet. I know, it's passing so quickly. And then prior to joining us, he worked at many different companies. He has over 15 years of experience leading product management teams and at companies like Capital One in the financial services space. And he also worked in companies in consumer goods, e-commerce, and interactive agency domains. Before we get started, Jake, I'd like to first start by taking care of some housekeeping items. And we always like to just remind our listeners, we at 280 Group take pride in our mission, and we get up every morning, every day for the goal of empowering product professionals with the knowledge and tools to build products that matter. And we do it differently from anybody else on the market because we come together with a whole suite of solutions for any product team or product manager of any size or at any part of your career. So whether you are an individual looking to grow your skills and accelerate your career, or you're a product management leader looking to increase your team's effectiveness, we have the people, the experience, and the services that will get you to the next level. Check us out at 280group.com. After this webinar, please stay in touch with the product management community. There's plenty of options out there, but one of them we want to encourage you to join is our product management LinkedIn group. Use it as a forum to share best practices with your peers and discuss the importance of product management and share ways to make your product management teams even more effective. We'll also be sharing a link to join in the chat box shortly. During the webinar, we want to make this as collaborative as possible. We love interacting with you. So Jake, with your permission, I'd like to even bring some questions throughout this live webinar. Are you okay?
Let's do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So everybody, if you can take a note of where the Q&A box is on your screen. I'll also try to monitor chat. Q&A makes it a little bit easier for me. But we will be leaving time, of course, for Q&A at the end of the webinar. But as you just heard, if you want to throw Jake some hard questions throughout, this is your chance. Our most popular question, I'll just answer it right now. Can I watch this later? And the answer, of course, is yes. Every attendee will be receiving a link to the webinar recording after it has ended. And with that, Jake, I'm going to hand it over to you to discuss stakeholder management.
Yeah, thanks, Rina. So a quick sneak peek at the topics we're going to cover today. We're going to take a look at defining stakeholder management. It's a bit tricky. How to involve the right stakeholders, saying no once you've cultivated that community of stakeholders, and then we'll wrap up and try to address any questions that might still remain. Before we jump in, let's take a quick poll. There's no right or wrong answer here. Let's be clear about that. But tell us right now why you actually perform as a PM. Why do you perform the act of managing your stakeholders? So I think Michelle is going to launch a poll real quick. And there it is. And we'll give it about 20 to 30 seconds to let folks chime in and reply here.
All right, yeah, people are starting to reply. Okay, there's no clear leaders yet. And that's right, because I think taking a look at this list, I can imagine you probably need it for just about everything. All right, so far, wow, there really are no leaders.
Interesting, okay. I always like the because I should, right? I like that answer the most. Tells me people are paying attention.
Okay, so we have a number of responses in, and so I'll share the results, but
Oh,
gosh.
wow. Okay, yeah, I see that. Yeah. 50% secure resources, manage risk, yes. Get team to do its new, yeah. All right answers, right? I'm actually grateful that because I should is the lowest response, so that's good.
I was
We're
just
going
about
to
to
talk more about that in a little bit here. All right. Let's move on. Let's cover some of the themes we're going to cover today, right? So, as product people, we rely on our business partners to successfully progress our product. Effective management of these partners can be really challenging. Can feel like herding cats with every partner wanting to go off in a different direction or pursue their individual goals. So for the next 35 minutes or so, I'm going to attempt to give you some practical tips to get them all headed in the same direction so that we can secure their support for important product decisions. Listen, like, we're not going to be able to dive too deep on a subject that has resulted in dozens of books, entire modules and B-School curriculums, and countless blog posts. My hope is that you leave today with one or two bits of information that's wise, informative, or otherwise memorable. And just to double down on what Rina mentioned earlier, I'd really like for this to be interactive and engaging. So drop your questions into the Q&A tab there in Zoom. Use chat, but it is a little bit easier if you use the Q&A function. Business opportunities really exist because of human problems. And I like to think that we've chosen this craft of product management, and I use that word craft very intentionally, to uncover or discover unmet customer needs, right? And then we test those hypotheses related to those unmet needs, and then we build solutions that are desirable, viable, and feasible. To this day, I am convinced, even after 15 years of doing this, that we have the most interesting and fulfilling job yet created, aside from ours at 280 Groups, which is teaching this. But this is such a cool function that we get to do every day. But it's our job to drive sustainable business growth. It's our job to determine if there's opportunity for market penetration, market expansion, product expansion, diversification, or acquisition. And while it's our job to do those things, we can't go at it alone. Depending upon the size of the team and the organization, this could mean a handful of colleagues or partners, or an entire army of people that we've got to lean on for expertise, knowledge, and approval.
If nothing else from this webinar, I just encourage the viewers to potentially take a screenshot of just this slide. So if you're having any issues with roles and responsibilities in your organization, you can flash it up and try to explain, this is my job. This is what I'm here to do.
Yeah, use this one as your opening shingle for each deck you produce from here on out.
Right.
Okay, so, to clarify, I'm talking about our stakeholders, right? Defining a stakeholder is a little bit tricky, just like it is to manage them. Here, you're going to see three different definitions. I'll refrain from, highlighting favorites here, but I think ours is pretty good. Roman Pichler has one, and Product School there at the bottom, they have one too. And again, they're all different. I think they're all right. But I would contend that ours is the most comprehensive, right? We'll see this a bit later. But there's an hierarchy of stakeholders as well. There are those that we want to inform. There are those that we want to consult. And then I think most importantly, there are the stakeholders that we want to collaborate with. And we'll talk more about this in just a few slides. Okay, let's start with why. At 280 Group, we really help PMs and PM organizations become more strategic, to elevate them to be thought leaders. We've heard and we've seen this, that the PMs often fall into the trap of being order takers and feature brokers. It can feel like we're constantly putting out fires or chasing the next big thing, right? And most of that time, not all the time, but most of that time, it's due to the operating model of not knowing how to interact with or manage these stakeholders and business partners. It can feel like a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. So that's what this game here is presenting. That's what this guy's playing. But when we shift how we engage with and manage our stakeholders, we get that community working with us instead of against us, right? A united team of the PM and all of the stakeholders involved, they really enable faster time to market, better decision-making, products that meet customer and market needs, and ultimately they ladder up to that sustainable business growth that we're after. Recall from just a few slides ago, I said that job one is to drive sustainable growth, and we made a recommendation to screen grab that one slide there, that one image. In order to do that, we've really got to lead our stakeholders to achieve and create that value together and achieve product success. I've seen us, the royal us, take different tracks when it comes to managing these stakeholders. Some product people aim to please the stakeholders by saying yes to every single request, or by brokering compromises in all of these requests, right? We see this a lot in enterprise environments where product managers are expected to be feature brokers. This carries the risk of really offering a product that has a weak value proposition. It can give rise to poor user experiences, and it consists of really like a loose collection of features. When you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. Now, the other path I see us take is that they rule with an iron backlog, if you will. They say no to everything that doesn't come from that triad of product, design, and engineering. We fail to leverage the knowledge and expertise of that stakeholder community. And I think what's more, it makes it unlikely that those stakeholders will support us in future decisions related to the product. And we end up creating adversaries instead of advocates. So I think, effective stakeholder management really starts by embracing the right attitude. See the stakeholders as equal partners. We're going to take an interest in their perspective, their ideas, their concerns, their underlying needs. We have to build trustful connections with those individuals, those teams, and encourage them to work together. We'll refine this in just a few slides, but you should be aware it's not all stakeholders that we want to do that with, right? Remember, I made a comment earlier about an hierarchy, and we'll double down on that. But you still want to foster the relationship with most of your stakeholder crowd. Okay, so we've adopted this mentality that our stakeholders are our peers, our partners. Simon Sinek, if you haven't found him on TED or on YouTube, he's brilliant, he's fantastic. I can't recommend his content enough. He has this golden circle theory, and I think it's brilliant. And the theory explains how leaders can inspire trust, cooperation, and change if they start a story with why, right? Instead of focusing on the what or the how, let's lean in and really crystallize the why. I think as PMs, we need to adopt a very similar approach, right? Our stakeholders, sure, they care about what's being built and how, but they need to know why. They want to know our purpose, our belief, and our cause. I think too often we ignore the why, or we throw it to the side, we dismiss it, right? Or we talk about it later as we're engaging with our stakeholders. We focus too much on the what and the how, and we do that because we think that's the fastest way to get buy-in. That the only true way to get buy-in is to really start with why. We've got to do that. We've got to have that shared purpose, right? That why comes from our expertise about our markets. It's built up using the core PM skills like data analysis, market research, prioritization. The why is based upon deep understanding of our customers, our competitors, and the trends and forces that are operating within the market in which we operate. We've got to develop. Yeah, go ahead, Rina.
Yeah, so Jake, because there's so many different kinds of stakeholders in an organization, is the why the same? Do you bring the same why to the table?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, this sort of goes up to the broader question of like communication, right? Know your audience, right? The why that we offer an executive audience is going to be different than the why that we would explain or offer to legal or compliance or finance or accounting. So I think we really do have to take a step back and say, like, who are we communicating to? And we've got to ask ourselves, what do I need to, what do they need to understand, right? What is going to matter to them as I'm engaging with them? And from there, we can cater the message related to the why. But
Yeah,
like to that point though, it's about developing and practicing these skills related to communication, collaboration, negotiation, influence, and decision making. These are all critical to explaining the why. So I would challenge the listeners today, the participants, the next time that we present something, right? Let's start with a story of why. And then, included in that, let's start with the source of evidence to support the why. Lead with data. Okay. Included in the sort of the tool set, if you will, we have as PMs is our vision, our product vision, and our strategy. This is a really important topic, and if we can't communicate a strong product vision for others to align to, a vision that satisfies customer needs and the organization's goals, it's going to be really difficult for us to influence others and get them on board with us for them to follow us, right? Our stakeholders, they've got to have confidence that we are leading them down the right path. Guiding them with a clear vision and strategy is one way to build that confidence. I think, Michelle, you're going to drop a link in the chat box here. Tom Evans, who is on staff at 280 Group, wrote a really fantastic blog post about this and how to really articulate the vision, the strategy, and some communication tips and tricks here too. I encourage y'all to take a look at that afterwards. But it's got some really important nuggets of information there around why the vision and strategy are so bedrock to what we do. So what you see on this slide is something called the TCC, or Trust, Confidence, and Cooperation Model. And it really seeks to explain social trust. At the core of the model is a distinction between trust and confidence. Trust is based on social relations, on shared values, right? The basis for confidence is prior performance, though. But together, both trust and confidence, in a range of combinations, they can lead to different forms of cooperation, right? Trust is social and relational, and confidence, again, is earned. It's based on, like I said, like past performance. Confidence really comes from experience, right? As their track record of success grows, so often will stakeholder confidence. This is why you often hear leaders emphasize the need to deliver quick wins as a means to build that confidence.
So Jake, what advice do you have for product managers that are maybe already have a team and they don't currently have trust built with their stakeholders?
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, I met a guy. I'm gonna say his name, named John Schmidt. And John Schmidt was he's to this day one of my mentors. And when he first joined the company I was working at, he had this really unique approach to him. And John Schmidt would walk around. He had this giant tote bag of treats, of candy, right? At any given time, there was roughly, it was 15 pounds of stuff, and between $200 and $300. I mean, he had everything from like fine chocolates to energy gum to granola bars, you name it, he had it in this satchel. And one day I finally asked him, I'm like, John, like, what is this? What are you doing? Like, why are you? Every meeting he would go to, he carried this bag of treats with him. And he finally explained it in the form that this bag of treats was his social currency. No matter what discussion, no matter how heated it may have gotten in a previous meeting, or no matter who we passed in the hallways where we worked, John had a conversation starter with him. You know, oh, do you have any dark chocolate peanut butter cups? Yeah, sure. Hey, let me talk to you about something. It was a conversation starter. It was his social currency. This is how he got work done. I will never ever forget this. I mean, this is hopefully it's relatable, but I think what I'm illustrating here is it's that human to human connection. We have to really foster. We have to make investments in it. We can't, as much as we might like to try, we can't hole up with our teams. We've got to get out there and act as evangelists for our products. It takes effort. You have to make yourself a little bit vulnerable. You have to get out there, socialize your product, and really make those investments in yourself. And John had a very unique way of doing it. And I'm going to copy it if we ever have a return to office situation.
I was just going to ask, what is the virtual equivalent of 15
Yeah,
pounds?
I don't know. We got to figure that out. I don't know, like $1 or $2 Amazon gift cards. I don't know what the equivalent is.
All right, we are getting a few questions.
Sure.
So I do want to answer one of these because I think it's relevant. So an anonymous person asked, how do you build a human connection with technical teams, especially in a conservative industry? Do you have any advice there?
Again, I think it really does depend on. I think the advice I would offer there is, you know, it's really tough in this environment to use one of my favorite tools, which was just take someone to lunch, right? It's incumbent upon us to really work hard to foster those one-on-one relationships. We're going to see why here too in just a few minutes.
So I have an answer for that one, and I think it's actually true in any situation. The best way to build a relationship is to have a genuine interest in that person and to just understand what is interesting to them, and that way you can build something common, right? That's what you want to do, is you want to understand what common interests do you have. And it might not be the same across your entire technical team, but having that genuine interest, people know. Right. I think people could tell if you really care about who they are.
Yeah, so like Jen, yeah, you got to be authentic, right? And it's not just, you should want to strive to do that without having some sort of like ulterior business motive in mind too, right? Like just get to know the people you work with, get to know them as humans. It's something we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation too. What else you got? Anything else? We're pressing right now?
Well, I have a good one, but I think you should go over this slide first, and then we could answer that one.
All right, great. So earlier, we agreed that a stakeholder is any person or group of people who might be impacted by the activities or decisions of an organization or team within the company, right? And these next two slides are based on content from Roman Pichler. And if you haven't found him, he's another brilliant product mind. I really like his content. And I really like this model he's created here. So to focus the stakeholder management energy, you got to identify who your key stakeholders are. And key stakeholders being defined as those individuals with whom you want to establish a trustful connection and then collaborate on a regular basis with, right? And this is particularly helpful when we're faced with a large group of stakeholders, which again is not uncommon in enterprise environments. And so the tool he's come up with, this stakeholder analysis tool, is the Power Interest Grid. All right, it's a simple 2x2 that assesses stakeholders by based upon their power that they yield in an organization, as well as their interest, right? It assumes that people take a low or high interest in product, in your product, and they have low or high power, right? This then results in 4 different quadrants, right? Players, subjects, context setters, and then the crowd, as you can see illustrated here. You'll see the red circle around players, and these are the key stakeholders. These are the partners whose trust you should really strive to earn. So Rina, back to the example you're saying, like get to know them as people, right? Who you should really closely collaborate with, and who you should involve in these important product decisions. You know, this avoids the risk that the stakeholder management work becomes overwhelming, consumes too much of your time, right? I'm not saying ignore the other 3, but your energy should be focused on the players and really making that effort to collaborate with them. So, pulling that forward just a little bit, we've identified who we want to collaborate with, right? Now what? Again, we need to go back to that sort of shared purpose, right? We have to explain to them why we've selected them. What is it we want from them, right? Give them purpose. So in doing so, I think we've also got to establish clear roles and responsibilities, right? If this group of people, if they aren't clear on what's expected of them and who is doing what, confusion will arise, right? And that collaboration that we've agreed to is so important. It really becomes difficult, becomes muddy. Bring this group together and have joint strategy sessions, instead of this series of like individual, separate conversations. Treat this group as your advisory board, your roundtable, if you will. Leverage the expertise and knowledge that is made to it, right? Similarly, like use that group to set goals on product strategy and where you want to go and how we might execute the product roadmap. If you can really improve the collaboration with that stakeholder group and address these issues, you're going to have a better product overall. Full stop. One way to do that too is treat the stakeholder community the same way you would, an agile team, right? What I mean by that is you would want to conduct stakeholder retros the same way you'd conduct sprint retros, right? Find out what's working. Do a simple start, stop, continue exercise, right? Again, this is your working team. This is your advisory board. You're going to use this team to gain buy-in, leverage their ideas, and again, just double down on that trustful relationship with them. The thing I want to caution everyone is that collaboration, it really does require leadership. So be open, but be decisive. Focus on the outputs that are going to yield the best product and business outcomes, right? So again, having that vision and that strategy is so bedrock to managing this audience of stakeholders.
So Jake, we had a question from an audience member that I think is relevant here. Joe asks if we should consider building personas for internal stakeholders. What do you think about that?
I think it's possible. I'd want to hear a little bit more about that, Joe. If you can articulate, like, what might that look like from a PM point of view, like personas for what as it relates to our stakeholders. I mean, I guess we kind of have that now with these subjects and players and context setters, but I'm interested to learn that.
I think personas personally might be going a little bit too far, because personas are supposed to, represent like a market segmentation almost, or a user. You might want to think in the language of what's in it for them. So you might want to have high level. If I'm working with a stakeholder from finance, typically I want to bring this kind of information to that kind of meeting. But I don't know if you want to go through the exercise of building fully fleshed out personas. Joe responds, the idea is to understand their background, attitudes, goals, and motivations.
So I think that's totally fair. Yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes back to just sort of general communication principles that we're going to have just as business professionals, right? We have to know our audience and know what matters to them. I don't know if I could create personas, right? Because I think each one is just going to be a little bit different, right? It's like something that matters to finance may not matter to engineering, right? But again, like I think it's just we have to know who we're talking to, and again, what matters to them.
Yeah, and I think that's probably at the core of this question is, at the end, you really need to talk in their language and understand background, attitudes, and their motivation. So yeah, so if personas means that for you, then sure, you can try to build one.
That motivations is really important too, because I think I know I've committed this faux pas many times.
Yeah.
Each business unit is going to have different like quarterly objectives, right? And what we're trying to accomplish may not be in direct support of what the head of finance might be trying to accomplish this particular quarter, right? So again, like I think it sort of underscores the importance of knowing what their motivations are.
So Joe, actually, I'm going to say this one out loud because he brought in some good ideas in the Q&A about doing an empathy interview with your key stakeholders, and that sounds like a pretty good idea as well.
I like the idea a lot. Yeah. Treat your stakeholders as customers, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So again, we're not going to agree on everything all the time. And I've seen PMs sort of apply two different models related to decision making when it comes to partnering and collaborating with their stakeholders. I will say up front, I think a lot of these differences in approach, they depend on company culture, right? So keep that in mind for the next couple minutes or so. In this first model that I want to talk about is this notion of decide and then sell. And so the model here is the PM makes an informed decision, recommendation, and then they convey that recommendation to the stakeholder community. The challenge with this, if you will, is it can be lengthy and it can be iterative, right? It's a process that requires sort of rounds of negotiation and persuasion, right? The PM goes in and talks with stakeholder A, then they go talk to B, they go back and talk to A again. You can kind of see how this just adds to the overall time. We tend to see this more in smaller teams, smaller organizations, where the PM is likely to be, highly empowered, and maybe there's less socialization required to move things forward. The other model that I see is this collaborate and then decide. The PM will bring the key stakeholders together, and then decide sort of in a session, a collaborative session, hey, whatever decision is on the table, right? And it leverages the group's collective knowledge and ensures a shared understanding, right? There's that shared understanding we talked about before. It allows the individual stakeholders to be aware of others' perspectives and interests too. You tend to see this in medium and large organizations where, the decision being made is going to have like far-reaching impacts, right? So if you're managing a product, say, in a financial services company, and that whatever you build is probably going to have a pretty significant impact to the agent population of people who are directly talking to customers. You see this model a lot too, and it really sort of helps people understand the impact or how far-reaching that impact might be related to that decision. But I want to highlight a third option. And in the abstract for this webinar, I kind of went a little deep on this notion of lobbying, right? And this is where it comes into play. And this third option is a bit of both. And it does mainly apply in large sort of enterprise organizations. And so the PM has a decision to be made, and they rely on one or two key allies from that key stakeholder community, right? And they're doing a bit of lobbying with those allies, right? And those allies and that PM are together going to influence and lobby the rest of the stakeholder community, right? And so those allies, if you are going to be advocating for you and the product and the decision to be made. So you've kind of carved off a much smaller key stakeholder community, and there's power in numbers, right? So instead of the PM going and proposing a recommendation, it's now the PM plus, a small audience or a small cadre of key allies. This can make those collaboration discussions a heck of a lot smoother, right? So you go in and you've got, mass, if you will, making this recommendation to the rest of the stakeholder community, and the stakeholder community is saying like, okay, everybody's well versed in what's going on, right? And together, it just really cuts down on the decision-making time. So that's where we see these sort of the two primary models, and then the hybrid approach.
So Jake, do you have any examples of where you've used these models and they were really effective?
Yeah, so let me focus on the do both, because I think it might illustrate examples from both. Years ago, I was building an experience for a financial services company, and it was really meant to digitize a cardholder function that had traditionally lived in the phone channel only, right? And it was activating a credit card online. And we really believed in it. We saw customer demand for it, and we were well on the path towards building the experience itself. And the key decision to be made was, hey, do we put this the top of the funnel, if you will, do we put it behind an authenticated experience or not? And by that I mean, like, you have to log in to actually to perform this function or not, right? And we had gone round and round and round and round with this, right? We're talking about a stakeholder audience probably in excess of 80 people, and we weren't making much progress because we kept having these collaborative discussions, and then right afterwards we would all change our minds, right? It was this never-ending cycle of talk about it, commit to it, and then back off. And it was really troublesome because we couldn't make any progress on putting the product into market. And so finally we took a step back, and we roped in some executive sponsors, and they had the sort of suggestion, hey, listen, like, let's figure out who the key allies for this decision might be. Let's get them to go lobby on our behalf, right? Let's create these allies to the product team such that they can then go illustrate why we want to make a particular decision. And so we employed that model. And the next round, prior to the next round of decision making, you saw all these sort of backroom lobbying conversations taking place, and it resulted in the decision that the product team wanted to make, and it stuck then as well. So it's tough to get into specifics about it, but I will say that this lobbying model, it works when applied right and in this large and sort of enterprise environment.
Yeah, this reminds me of the term, I don't know if you know it, nemawashi. When you're okay, so it's a skill set. It's similar to this, where even in large meetings, if there's an important decision to be made, even if you're doing the collaborate then decide, you want to make sure all the key stakeholders, what their opinions actually are, so that you can influence the group. So you don't want to go into any meeting cold, like not really knowing what exactly is going to end up as a result. So it's a Japanese term, and I think in certain cultures, right, that's the other important point. In certain cultures, collaboration could be a little different. So
absolutely,
that's something to keep in mind.
You've given me homework now, Rina. I'm going to study that.
Oh, typical.
Okay. In data we trust, right? Data-informed decision-making is now more powerful and prevalent than ever. And frankly, everyone in business, right, is using data, both qualitative and quantitative, to really reduce friction when it comes to decision-making, right? So we're using data more and more to, instead of guessing what our customers need, we can use the data from their behavior already, from their feedback, to understand what it is they need. And then we use that information to make informed decisions about the products, about the experiences we're building, but also to manage our stakeholders. What you see here is a product called The Most Dangerous Animals of Product Management. I love this. This is the product of someone else on the 280 group team by the name of Dean Peters. He's been working on this for quite some time. And let me call your attention to the hippo. Right? I'm sure we've all encountered this person before, the highest paid person in their opinion. Unlike
I did all of these, okay, so I can't look at the slide.
When I first read the Seagull Manager, I was like, oh, that's what that's called. Got it. Interesting. Right. I love that one. So unlike hippos in the wild, the hippo in many companies is far from endangered, right? Hippos, by their definition, aren't based on facts or data. It's their opinion, right? As you see, it's defined here on this page. However, you can counter the effects of the hippo stakeholder with data, right? There are other dangerous animals of product management, but we see the impact and probably feel the impact of the hippo the most. And I already mentioned that Dean is the author of this. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is an upcoming webinar that goes into detail about all of the most dangerous animals within product management. I also heard that there's another one being added.
Yeah.
So maybe a shameless plug. I don't know, maybe. But again, fall back to data for this one.
So Jake, one of our audience members, Ryan, says that these product animals made his day. I've lived all of these at least once. Now, I'm just going to say it. We've all lived these animals, and some of us have been these animals. So even the people who are usually self-aware might do something. And that's why it's so important to bring in data into the conversation. Because people are people, even the most well-meaning ones may fall into some bad patterns without really noticing.
I love that.
Yeah, I have a question here that was related, I think, to the previous slide. I can wait until the Q&A unless you want to answer it now.
Let's go back.
Okay, so it just came in at the end. So Robin writes that they believe the models may fall short because in Agile, I guess these models implicitly assume that designing a product can be done quickly, when in fact far more discovery needs to happen before valuable info is recognized to enable designing a product that actually delivers. My guess on this question is you really need to build, learn, and measure.
Yep.
To be able to make good quality decisions. And we do cover this in another webinar on how to make data-driven or data-informed decisions. But how do you bring these models to life when you really need to experiment and do the build, measure, learn loop?
Well, so let me play back what I think the question is, right? And I think, or the question, or maybe the criticism, if you will, like these models fall short. And maybe the criticism is like, well, we should never have these because we should have enough data to influence these decisions, right? Or make these decisions for us. Is that right?
I think that is, Robin, you can also write if we're getting this wrong, but I think that's what this question is asking, that don't you need to get more discovery data, more experimentation to get valuable information to be able to make decisions?
So from a philosophical point of view, yes, 100%. When we actually go to apply that, especially in enterprise environments, it's just a little bit different. Again, because each of the business units may have different motivations, right? So we might be leading with, hey, the customer really wants X, Y, Z, right? The customer wanting X, Y, Z might directly conflict with a business goal. I'm making things up here, just give me a bit of grace. Might directly conflict with a desire to reduce, contacts related to might directly relate to contacts related to card activation, again, to use that example, right? So I think the decision point we have to make then is, hey, customer and industry data and market data says this. We're going after a slightly different objective in the operational space, right? We know that the data says X, Y, Z. How does that conflict or correlate to the strategy within our operations team, right? What might the compromise be? So I hear you that again, data is, and data we trust, but we've also got to keep in mind what are the different motivations of the different business groups that might be impacted by this decision.
Okay, Jake, I think that was as good an answer as I could give.
I think by and large, though, we've got to have a process to say no to our stakeholders, right? Again, we're not going to agree on everything. And as much as we'd like to say no and then move on, I think it rarely works that way. So this decision framework was authored by Todd Blacchiere on our team at 280 Group as well, and I love the simplicity of this. Right. So the first goal is to understand. Right. When you want to say no, you gotta ask why. Why are they challenging you? Right. Why are you coming at it from this perspective? You're gonna ask clarifying questions until you understand the why. Right. Next, you're going to play back what you heard and include the intended outcome. Focus on facts, not opinions. And then seek out the agreement that you understand what they're actually sharing with you, right? Have I heard this right? This emphasizes, and this is really important, this emphasizes that you're responding. You're not reacting to it, right? Responding implies critical thoughts being demonstrated here. And you're not just reacting in the moment. Then you're talking about you want to frame the trade-offs in terms of value and outcomes, right? If we choose to do one thing, that means we can't do something else. You'll be more successful here if you've been transparent with the stakeholders regarding decision-making and prioritization, right? Listen, sometimes you might be done at steps 2 or 3, right? You've presented in such a way, you responded thoughtfully, and they may understand why you want to make a certain decision, right? But if we need to go on, more often than not, it's saying no, it's saying not right now. Again, lean on that vision, lean on that strategy, remind them of the shared outcomes and why we're saying no today, but it might not be no tomorrow, right? These reasons for saying no shouldn't be thought of as excuses, but rather explanations. So again, like it's rare. There are cases, right? But it's rare that it's an outright no. It's more often it's an outright no.
Yeah, so I love this model. I hear, by the way, I hear Roger using it on me all the time, and it's great. No, but it is really great because you can't prioritize everything, and that's at the heart of this, especially
Right.
when and it's one of the hardest jobs of a product manager is you're responsible for a group of people and their interests. And I'm not just talking about your users and customers.
Right.
And so at the core of this model or framework, what have you, is that you let people feel heard while you're also explaining to them why they can't get their needs met by you
Exactly
right
right.
now.
It's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yep.
It's great.
All right. All right. So pictures of kids. This always reels everybody in, right? So like, there were some not so obvious parallels between kids making friends and managing stakeholders. And here's a personal story. So last week, we took our 2 young kids to the beach for summer vacation. They're 5 and 3, and they're naturally very curious. One of the great podcasts that we've found to entertain them and preserve our own sanity on long road trips is But Why, the podcast for curious kids. It's a great short form podcast that really breaks down sort of complex topics into kid-friendly guides, right? The host, she's just fantastic. One of the episodes that we listened to was about kids and friendships and why it's important for kids to have friends. And I'll do my best to summarize here. And to make friends, you have to show an openness to friendship. That can be as easy as smiling or saying hi, just being kind. It's important to be kind to those potential friends, right? It also helps to identify the people who have similar interests as you, and then you invite them to do something. Kids make friends by doing fun things with other kids, right? I had that light bulb moment. Let me go back real quick. I had that light bulb moment as we were listening to this. The way that kids make friends is similar to the way we find the people that we want to collaborate with, right? We've got to be kind, we got to be authentic, right? We have to have a shared objective in mind. And let's figure out together how we're going to accomplish that goal and then celebrate it when we reach it. I think that celebratory thing was really, really key for me. So the picture you see on the right-hand side is there was this girl next to us on the beach, and Parker and Beckett were digging a hole because that's what we do at the beach, right? And this girl came up and said, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." It was as simple as that. They're like, "Let's dig this hole together." And for the next 8 hours, they played together in the sand. They accomplished the goal of digging at least one hole in the sand. And they celebrated when they did it. It was so pure, right, to watch in the moment. But the parallels between this and us forming relationships with stakeholders in the office setting, the parallels were just too strong to pass up. So I really wanted to relay that story. All right, so let's kind of replay the 5 tips that we talked about today, right? So again, let's lean on our vision and strategy. Let's start with why, right? Focus on why something needs to be done, right? Give everyone purpose. I already mentioned it too, but really invest in and then fall back on your product vision and strategy docs. Don't be afraid to do that. Remember too that those documents are living, right? They're never really cast in stone. They're living. They're going to evolve. They should evolve. Handpick your stakeholders and focus on those that have the most interest and power, right? They'll find the ones that you really want to collaborate with and that can have the outcome you desire for your product. Pick a decision-making strategy based upon company culture, right? So again, I hear the criticisms of that, of the 3 different models, but a lot of it depends on company culture and the tack you're going to take as a PM. And then remind yourself that in most cases, and remind your stakeholders that in most cases, I'm not saying no, I'm saying not right now, right? So those, I think, are 5 tips that you can probably apply almost immediately. I hope you can anyway. As a bit of a sneak preview, Rina, if I can steal the thunder for a second.
You can go ahead.
Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it? No, Rina, you do it.
Your thunder.
All right. We again, at 280 Group, we're always looking to level up our PMs, right? So we are pretty excited to announce that we're launching a new workshop to help teams conquer these challenges related to stakeholder alignment. And it's called PM Collaboration for Stakeholders. Internally, we call it PMCS. And so it helps these stakeholders understand what product management brethren are learning. And we do that through sort of a strategic consulting engagement. We call it an optimization, right? We also partner with our OPM, or Optimal Product Management, and our DPM flagship courses. This workshop is going to be offered as a private course only. It's going to be offered live online or in person. Again, in person. Our team loves to travel. So if you're out there and you guys are back in the office, we love to travel. So in terms of what you'll learn, you'll appreciate how great companies benefit from strong product management teams. You'll understand the roles and responsibilities of product management. You'll understand how PMs manage products throughout the product lifecycle. And really, you're gonna learn tips and tactics to better collaborate with the PMs to drive more successful products and company outcomes. So be on the lookout for that from us in the very, very near future. So with that, Rina, I think I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely an exciting new course. And I mentioned it at the beginning. At 280 Group, our goal is to transform product management teams. And one of the ways that we know product management teams need to transform is the people they work with need to understand what it means to have a highly empowered and effective product management organization at their company. So if you're interested in any of our services, whether it's training for your team, our consulting services, or this brand new how to get your stakeholders better aligned with product management, please reach out to us. I think we're gonna paste a link in the chat as well. Also, exciting news, if you've been to our website recently, you'll know that we are currently running a back to school sale to commemorate the end of summer. So if anybody is interested on working on their skills and their career now, we have a special price currently available directly on our website. We'll also paste a link in the chat right now if you're interested in taking a look. I think it's 20% off. So now we're going to get into Q&A. I know we've been answering a few of your questions as we go along, but we do have a few more questions we want to get to. We also want to launch a poll because we want to make sure we're doing our best in bringing great high quality webinars to you. So please let us know if this webinar was valuable to your day. So Jake, let's get into a few of these questions. The first one is this is actually a follow-up from Robin. And I want to address it because Robin's point was that the way that the model, I think I understand what this person is saying, the way the model is outlined, it looks like it's a decision point is made,
Ah,
and then it's done, right?
yeah.
I think what we're trying to communicate here, it's that it's an iterative process, even with your stakeholders, but there's different ways to communicate and get buy-in from your stakeholders using collaboration models, which require meeting with them, either as a group together, either one-on-one, or identifying, as Jake said, the key players who are going to be your best people in influencing the rest of the group.
Yep.
So Jake, did I get that?
I think you nailed that one. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the additional context is helpful there. Yeah, too. It's point in time, right? And it just like you said, Rina, it's no matter which approach you take, there's going to be iterations to it. It's never one and done, so much as we might like to think it is.
Even in our company, when we're working together as an executive team and making business decisions, sometimes the decision made is we need more information. And so the action item is X person, go get more information, bring it back to the team so we can have a better discussion. So
Check.
absolutely, that decision could be, yeah, get more information. All right, we have a question here from Ba3. How do you deal with stakeholders who are detail oriented? They're not the ones who are having the strategic vision, the visionaries. They're more interested in the execution, the day-to-day. So is there a better tactic in dealing with them?
Well, I think the first thing we have to ask, and this may be a tough question, right, is are they one of our key stakeholders? And if they're not, I think we have to make a decision. We have to be honest with, transparent with them too. Like, hey, listen, like I understand your need for additional detail, but you know, you may not be fitting into that player's quadrant, right? That may be a tough message to deliver. I understand that. Let's play it forward as they are in that player's quadrant. We are going to need to continue to make investments in that relationship, get them comfortable with you know, the level of detail that helps them make informed decisions and get on board with you, right? So I think it's a two-parter. I think it's, hey, do they fall into that player's quadrant? If not, like, we have to decide, do we want to make the investment to, you know, bring them along for the ride? It may be no. That's okay. But at least we have a framework to outline to them, hey, listen, I get it, I understand it, but right now you may not fall into this bucket. And then it's, if they do, you as a PM have got to make the investment, the time investment needed to get them comfortable with it. A lot of times it's just them, it might not be a detail thing, it could just be well, maybe it is a detail thing, looking for context, right?
Yeah.
And purpose, right? They may not be understanding why you're making a recommendation that you are. So Rina, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would add a couple things. First of all, that idea from Joe around conducting an empathy interview with a particularly difficult stakeholder, someone who you're having difficulty communicating with, it's actually a good idea. I'm going to use that. I'm going to add it to the toolbox because at the end, you want to, it's communication with a person. So you really need to understand what method of communicating is going to work for your relationship with them. So I think that's what I would recommend. I think we have time just for one more question, so I'll get to it. So what is an effective tactic for building rapport? I think this is going along with how do you develop trust with your stakeholders?
Yeah, I'm going to have two different answers for this one. In a pre-pandemic environment, you know, again, my favorite tactic was take them to lunch, take them to go coffee. Just spend that one-on-one time with them, right? Find out who they are as a person, what makes them tick as a person, what their objectives for the next 90 days might be, right? But you got to be authentic about it. That's my answer for the pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, I think it's a lot of the same. It's just done in a different channel, right? It's done this way or done over the phone. I think we get so used to seeing each other on video now that we've kind of forgotten about there's this other channel entirely. Just go on a walk, right? Go on a walk and call that person. And again, conduct that pseudo empathy interview, right? Find out what makes them tick. What angle are they coming from? It can be done. It just, I don't think we as humans are entirely comfortable with having what feels to be an unnatural conversation audio only. I think we lost so much, in between meeting changes in the hallways at the water coolers, right? Like we lost a lot of that. And I think we're still finding ways to create that human touch again. Rina, what would you add?
Yeah, I'll just add, and I'll keep it short because we're at time. If you haven't yet, or if you haven't in a while, read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's a classic for a reason. It goes into a lot of psychology around how to really create lasting and meaningful relationships and how to influence people to your point of view. So I definitely recommend that as a resource. It has great tips there too.
Love it.
All right, everyone. This is the end of our webinar. Again, I hope you learned something. I always do. So big thank you to Jake, our wonderful webinar host for today. Thanks everyone for joining.
A lot of fun. Thanks. Bye now.